Ayin 16 Amud Aleph. So that the machlokas between Rab Meir and Rab Yossi, the way the Gemara is explaining, is of whether liquids in terms of their ability to metame other things, that they can be metame themselves. We'll see. Everybody agrees, but they can, by touching ochel, they can be metame something else. According to Rav Meir, it's only rabbinic. According to Rav Yossi, it's deraisa, the Tanya. Sufik mashkin litame. You have a doubt, a suffix regarding a certain beverage in terms of its ability itself to become tamei. So that we say is tamei because suffix midaraisa is lechumra. So we see the ability for fluid to become tamei clearly is deraisa according to Rav Meir. L'tamei acherim, if it's a suffix, whether someone touched this liquid or not, so it's suffix tuma, its bility to metame another food, it's tohor, because that's only rabbinic. And whenever you have suffix rabbanon lakula, so that div Rav Meir. So we see very clearly Rav Meir holds that the ability of fluids to metame other foods is only rabbinic. V'chein haya Rabbi Elazar oimer kidvarov. Rabbi Elazar said the same shita. Rabbi Yehuda oimer lakol tamei. Rabbi Yehuda was of the opinion that both the ability for a liquid to become tamei and its ability to convey tumah somewhere else is midoraisa. That's why suffix is always tamei. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Shimon Oimrim, la'oichlin tmeim. So they agree with Rabbi Yehuda regarding food, but la'kelim torim, but they don't have the ability to be metame kelim. So we see that the machlokas between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi is this issue, that the ability of fluids to be metame something else is only rabbinic, and Rabbi Yossi holds the ability to do it is midoraisa. That's why they have a debate in our Mishnah whether the cases are sufficient proof enough in order to teach this halacha that we've been dealing with in terms of whether you're allowed to burn truma tahara with truma tmeya. Okay. The Gemara is now going to here. Let me.
Be matame, right? Mashkin can be matame. Everybody. Mashkin is not, but everybody. Yosef and Rabbi Meir, everything.
No, Rabbi Yehuda says fluids can be metame kelim.
Yeah.
Rabbi Yehuda omer lakol tamei.
Oh, even kelim. Okay.
Well, a suffix mashkel tamei acherim. Kelim, yeah, bench, yeah, kelim too, and the part that we're concerned about, though, Elazar, is food. The case of our Mishnah is basar getting b'mitam. So the issue of kelim is not relevant right now. It may become relevant, but right now it's not. However, now we are going to deal with the sugya of fluids becoming tamei, whether they can be tamei themselves or whether they can be metame acher. Savar Rabbi Elazar mashkin islu tuma boila. In fact, the Gemara is incredulous that Rabbi Elazar holds that fluids bichlal can become tamei. Vatani Rabbi Elazar oimer ein tuma lamashkin kolikar. Fluids cannot become tamei min Torah. Teda, you should know. Sharei Yosef ben Yoezer East Sreda, he's one of the zugos, one of the early Tanoim. Al el kamsa dechein, on a certain type of grasshopper that was kosher. And more specifically for us, the al mashkin beis midbachaya, the fluids that were found in the places in the base of Mikdash where they butchered the meat, So we're talking about blood and water, dochein, that they also do not have the capability of becoming tamei. How can you tell me v'chein haya Rabbi Elazar omer kidvarov that mashkin l'tamei tamei? We see that Rabbi Elazar holds like Yosef ben Yoezer that fluids do not become tummy. Certainly, the rice anich l'shmuel the Amar dochein militami tumas achem avot tumas achman yesh lahen shapir. Shmuel explains Yosef ben Yoezer to say when he said it's kosher, it means they don't have the ability to metame foods beyond themselves. But for them themselves to become tamei, Shmuel says Yosef ben Yoezer holds. But Rav the Amar dochein mamish. But Rav understood Yosef ben Yoezer to say that fluids can't be mekamet tamei at all. Midoraisa Michael Meimar. Then how do you explain the baraisa above where it said v'chein Rabbi Elazar omer kidvarov? Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak achada. He's not agreeing with Rav Meir in both cases. Really, he agrees that Sofek Mashkin L'Tamei Acherim is Tohor. But really, he only agrees on that aspect. But even the ability for something Sofek to be Mitami itself, also he would hold that it's not, that it's Tohor. So the Gemara says, how can you say Rabbi Elazar only agrees with one of the issues of Rav Meir? Dvarav ka'amar. Dvarav means plural. He agreed with his words. Dinefishi. Which means he holds like Rav Meir exactly. So kasha. So the Gemara bleibt mit der kasha on this issue. Gufa. Okay, let's deal with it a little bit more in detail. Rav Amar, that when Yosef ben Yoezer said dachein, it meant kosher mamish. It means it doesn't have the ability to metame the fluid, and certainly not the ability to go further. Ushmuel Amar dachein militame tumas acherim, about tumas atzman yesh lehem. Shmuel held that Yosef ben Yoezer held that fluids could become tamei. Rav Amar dachein mamish k'sover tumas mashkin drabono, and that whenever fluids become tamei, it's only midrabbinic. It's only rabbonon. Why? And the chigas are rabbonon b'mashkin da'alma. That's other beverages. But uve mashkin beis midbachaya lo gozer. That there is tumas. That means mashkin can become tamei, but that's all beverages except those that are found in the base of migdash and the butcher house, meaning blood and water. That they were not gozer. Ushmuel omar dachein militami tumas acherim. They don't have the ability to metame further on. Aval tumas atzman yesh lehem. But they have the ability to become tamei. Ksovar tumas mashkin atzman deraisa. The ability for, let's say, a sheretz, when it falls on fluids, becomes tamei, it's midaraisa, not rabbinic. L'tamei acherim derabbanan. The ability for such fluid to be metame oichel, that's rabbinic. And the chigas are rabbanan b'mashkin da'alma. That's other fluids. But the mashkin beis midbachayil, the fluids, blood and water, they were not goizer. But v'chiloi gozer rabbanan, that's l'tmoy acherim. That's only to carry on tuma further. Aval tumas atzman yesh lehem. So that stakes out the shitas of Rav and Shmuel. Normally, Ravuna Barchin Librei. So Ravuna said to his son, Ki I'll tell Rav Papa, when you go to Rav Papa, Ramile, show him the following stira. Mi Amar Shmuel dachein l'tamei tumas acherim. Did Shmuel say that fluids don't have the ability to rise to be metame other things? Aval tumas atzman yesh lehem, but they have their own ability to become tamei. Korikan, what about the pasuk that says v'habasar asher yiga b'chol tamei lo yachel? meat that touches anything tamei, you may not eat, and that's midoraisa. So how can you tell me that Shmuel holds that fluids don't have the ability to tamei acheri? Amrav Shesha ben Ravidi, midi dehaver aviv b'kodesh, because that we're talking about a fluid that became a tamei as a revi, and revi cannot go further to metame other things, like we've learned. Truma only goes down to a shlishi, and kachim only goes down to a revi. So maskil Ravashi, but revi b'kodesh loy ikri tamei. A hegdish that becomes revi is called pasul, not tamei, and high ikri tamei. Again, the Gemara blights with a kasha. Kasha. Toshma, come in here another kasha. It says, "V'chol mashke asher yishaseh," fluids that you drink, v'chol kli can become tamei. This goes against Rav, who says that that fluids cannot become tamei at all midaraisa. And for the Gemara, ma yitma hichshir. This pasuk doesn't mean that the fluid becomes tamei. It means this fluid can moisten dry food that if a sheretz falls on it, it's machshir l'kabel tumah. For the Gemara hichshir, how could this tell me that this pasuk, b'chol mashke asher shaseh b'chol kli yitma, is only talking about hechshir l'kabel tumah? Mereisha the krosh ramaslei. The beginning part of that pasuk says, "Mikola ochel asher yachel." Asher yavo alav mayim yitma. That water falls upon will become tummy. So that is already the source for hechsher. Why do I need b'chol mashke asher shaseh b'chol kli yitma? That tells me the machsher as well. And for the Gemara, chad b'tlushin, chad b'mechubarim. There's two kinds of water. Water that's connected to the ground, like in a spring or in a water cistern. Or there's water that's mechubarin. Then there's water that's tlushin. I took a cup, put it in a spring, and lifted it out. That's separated from the ground. And I had to be told that both types of water can be machshir food to be mekabel tumah. And says the Gemara tzrichi, and I need a limud for both. That means I couldn't have learned one from the other. Diyashmin and betlushin, if I would have only been told the halacha, that water that separates from the ground can be machshir, dried food to be mekabel tumah. You know why? Mishum dachshavinu. You were machshiv. Hoyel, Rashi says, hoyel molon. You went ahead and took the trouble to take a cup, lower it into the ground, and separate and have water in the cup. Gila daito shutzarklem. V'zeu chashivoson. It's achshevei. You made it important. So that type of fluid, if it falls on food, is machshir the mekabel tumah. Aval mechubar ne'malo, but maybe just water that's in a spring, it's not choshev enough, and maybe it's not machshir something mekabel tumah. And the other way, if we would have been taught that water in a spring or in a bore has the ability to be machshir mekabel tumah, mishum dekayme beduchtayu chashiv. You make a point to leave the water and to protect that water in those areas, so it makes it chashiv. Aval tlushin, I might think that water in a cup, maybe it's not choshev, malo. So tzrichi, I had to be taught this din that both types of water are machshir food to be mekabel tumah. Toshma, come in here another kasha.
That's if you want it. In other words, it has to be, if it fell in a bore, and if you don't want it, then it doesn't become a kabel tumah.
Yes, all water, you have to be happy that the water fell on the food, correct?
So if it fell in by itself, it's
that we learn from the pasuk v'chiyutan mayim
chiyutan.
Yitain yutan. That's a different limit. Toshma. It says, Achma ayanu vor, mikve mayim yeh tahor. So there's a way, if water can become tahor, that it could be tameh. Ma yeh tahor mitumaso. Which seems to go against Rav, who says that water cannot become tameh. So says the Gemara, utlushin mi machshirin. You seem to take it as a dover pashut that water that had been separated in a cup could be machshir food to be mekabel tuma. Ivan Rav Yosef Rav Chanina mashkin basement b'chaya. We learned that fluids from the butchering place, blood and water, lo dayin shein dochain. It's not enough that they're tohor. Rather, also elashein machshirin. They don't have the ability. So how can you tell me that mayim tlushin are machshir? We learned from mashkin basement b'chaya that they can't even be machshir. And for the Gemara, tirgama al dam, blood is not machshir, but water is machshir. And where do we see this? Blood from kodshim, if it falls on dry food, it's not machshir to be mekabel tumah. Shenemar, what kind of dam can be machshir? Alo aretz tishbechenu kamoyim. When it's blood that you can just drop on the ground. Dam shenishbach kamayim machshir. It means only blood that you can allow falling on the ground. That's machshir, dry food to be mekabel tumah. Dam she'enu nishbach kamayim. And what kind of dam is that? Kodshim dam. Why? You've got to receive it in a kos, and you have to be zoyrek all the dam. You can't allow that blood to fall on the ground. So dam she'enu nishbach kamayim eino machshir. So therefore the kasha we had is only on blood. It's not on water. It's on blood. Blood is not machshir. Maskil or Shmuel Barami. Now, when you shecht an animal, so the initial spurting blood, the arterial spurting blood is called dama nefesh. The dama nefesh is the blood that you have to collect to do zrika. Then the blood that flows out slowly afterwards is called dama tamsis, is flowing blood. So, now that blood you don't have to collect. Yet, eino machshir. We know that dama tamsis also doesn't machshir. So your rule isn't correct. Amalei Rav Zera, hanech l'dama tamsis tafilu b'chulin nami loy machshir. Dama tamsis of any kind is not considered dam. Not kodshim damatamsis and not chulin damatamsis. And therefore, it's not machshir because it doesn't qualify as dam. Kiblu minei Rav Shmuel Barami, and Rav Shmuel received the Rachmana, rak chazak levilti achol adam, don't eat blood ki adam hu nefesh. Dam shanefesh yotza bo kori dam. The spurting blood is dam where you're not allowed to eat. Dam she'ein nefesh yotza bo ein kori dam. Now lahalocha you can't eat that either, but you don't get malchus for it. Midrabanan it's osir, but you only get malchus for eating dam nefesh. And damatamsis lalocha is not machshir dry food to be mekabel tumah because it's ein kori dam. Toshma, I'll continue to ask kashas on Rav or Shmuel. Dam shenitma. Remember, Rav said that fluids cannot become tamei midoraisa l'chatchila. Remember, Shmuel said it can, but it can't be metama acherim. But we're asking kashas on Rav because we keep on finding psukim that seem to suggest that dam can become tamei. So let's say you received dam in a kos. Uzrak, when you threw it on the mizbeach. So the Kohen Gadol wore something on his head called the tzitz, which said Kodesh LaHashem written on it. And the tzitz was meratzeh for inadvertent tumah. So therefore, if the Kohen did the zrika b'shogeg, he didn't know that it was tameh, hurtza. So the Baalim don't have to bring another korban. B'mezid lo hurtza. But b'mezid, it's lo hurtza. Because the tzitz only works for shogeg, not b'mezid. But anyways, we have our kasha, it says dam shenitma. So Rav would answer midrabana. Because we're not talking about dam shenitma midoraisa. It's midrabana. Udulok Rabbi Yosef ben Yoezer eats straight up. Not like Rabbi Yosef ben Yoezer, who said there's no tum at all. Not midrabana, not midoraisa. Toshma, I'll ask you another kasha. It says, Al mahit atzitz miratze, when the Kohen Gadol wore the tzitz, what does it atone for? So, al adam v'ala basar v'ala chelev, either blood, meat, or chelev, which are all things that might need to be offered on the mizbech or eaten by human beings. Shenitma, that became tameh. Bein b'shogeg, bein b'mezid, bein b'oinus, bein b'ratzon, bein b'yachid, bein b'tzibur. So we have our kasha. It says al adam shenitma. Rav and Shmuel argued whether Yosef ben Yoezer, when he said dachein al mashkin beis b'chaya, Rav said it's dachein mamish. It doesn't have the ability to makabel tuma at all midoraisa. Yet here it says it can. Again, and for the Gemara midrabanan. We're talking about a tumah drabanan udeloy kiyos ben Yoezer is straight. Toshma, I'll ask you another kasha. It says v'nasa Aharon es avona kodoshim. This again is referring to the tzitz, and these are various invalidations of korbanos. That the tzitz is maratza for. The chiyesa avanu no say. What is the tzitz atoning for? Im avon pigul, like we said, the kohen had in mind when he shech the animal to eat of the korban tomorrow. And somebody ate a kazayas of this. Harek vanemer lo yerotze. A korban like that is not acceptable, even with the tzitz. Im of a noiser, you have meat left over beyond 24 hours. Is it tzitz meratza for that? No. Harek vanemer lo yechoshev. So what is the tzitz meratza for? Ha'ena no se'ela ovan tuma. It atones for example, blood becoming tameh and gets thrown on the mizbeach. And why would tuma be an exception as opposed to pigul and noiser? Because we have a precedent, shahutra mechlala batzipur. We have a concept, for example, on Pesach, when more than 50% of Klal Yisrael are tameh, you're allowed to bring the korban Pesach betuma. So tuma already has a heter. So that's why the tzitz is maratza. But our proof here is that blood is becoming tameh. My lab tumas dam. And again, this is a kasha on Rav, who said that dam cannot be mekabel tumah midoraisa. On Rav Papa lo tumas kmotzim. We're not talking about dam becoming tameh. We're talking about when you do kmitza of a mincha. That means when somebody brings flour in a klishores and says harezu mincha, So in order to eat the mincha, the kohen has to dip his hand in it and do kmitza, clean off the thing, and then throw the kmitza in another vessel, and that other vessel is thrown on the mizbeach, and that allows the remaining flour to be eaten. So it's that kmitza that becomes tamei, according to Rav Papa, that the nasa aharon is avon kodashim, but it's not referring to dam, and therefore there's no kasha on Rav. Toshma, I'll bring you another proof. Hein isa ish psar kodesh, that if a person had a sheretz, biknaf bigdo, in his garment, v'noga biknafo lalecha, and the sheretz touched either bread, ve'ela nozit, or soup, or ve'layayin, wine, ve'l-shemen, ve'kol hayidash, will it become tamei? He asked the question. This is in Chagai. When they came back from Bavel to the Beis HaMikdash, he was testing the Kohanim, and he said, will this sheretz be metame this oichel? Vayanu HaKohanim vayomru lo yigdash. And the Kohanim said, no, it will not be metame. V'amar Rav, and Rav said, ishtabish kohani. So this proof we'll complete tomorrow. But
Yeah, we